The two beautiful and energetic girls who were traveling had a misfortune when they were targeted for kidnapping in a remote village in Argentina. And 3 months before they were targeted, another girl named Camila had been kidnapped in a place with her hands tied while screaming for help. The kidnapper, who was annoyed by her screams, approached and electrocuted her until Camila went limp. 3 months later, we cut to two American tourists named Stephanie and Ellie, who are biking through the Argentina countryside without noticing Camila's posters that have not been found until now. They then stop at a small village and meet the locals who are cleaning the memoriam monument without realizing that the photos are photos of people who have mysteriously disappeared in the area. With a less than fluent Argentina, Stephanie asked the direction of Rosemaria's hotel. The two arrived at the hotel and booked a room for one night because the next morning they planned to take a bus to the airport to return to America. After that, they were helped by a rather creepy hotel worker to the room. While Stephanie was waiting for Ellie to take a shower, she unexpectedly heard the door being knocked on quite loudly, which turned out to be just to deliver towels. After showering and lying down for a while, the two went to a cafe not far from the hotel, and there Ellie was seen reprimanding Stephanie, who was still communicating with her ex-boyfriend. Suddenly, the waiter served drinks and told her that it was the long-haired man who bought them, so they thanked him. Moments later, a man named Michael walked past them, and Stephanie seemed interested in him. Being the good friend she is, Ellie went to the music player to change the disco song to romantic music. Meanwhile, Michael, who Stephanie had been watching, was arguing with the waiter and then headed to the bathroom. Unexpectedly, Ellie followed and started to seduce him, but unfortunately, Ellie was rejected outright. Not wanting to go home without feeling the Argentinian man, Ellie approached the long man who had bought her a drink, and the long man did not refuse. While introverted, Stephanie finally decided to go home first. At 3 in the morning, Ellie brought the man to the hotel, which woke Stephanie up because of their disturbing voices. At that time, Chucho invited Ellie to spend the night at his house, but because Ellie refused the invitation, Chucho began to insist violently, so that Stephanie took action to bring Ellie in. Chucho, who was offended by the refusal, banged on the hotel door, and suddenly Michael, who was also staying at the same hotel, was disturbed by the commotion. But the hotel workers immediately broke up their fight. The next day, the two girls overslept and missed the bus, which only came once a day, despite their best efforts to catch it and shouting. Eventually, because of this incident, the two girls returned to the hotel and were forced to reschedule their flight. Then, to pass the time, Stephanie asked the receptionist about cool places to visit, but Ellie seemed too drunk to travel anywhere. After giving advice, the receptionist was called by the hotel worker, who turned out to be her husband, to discuss something that seemed quite strange. Unsuspecting, the two girls ended up cycling to a place called Villa del Lago that was previously suggested by the receptionist. There they decided to sunbathe near a waterfall, which was very quiet, and the tall grass surrounding them made them feel safe. A few hours later, Stephanie invited Ellie to the next tourist spot, but Ellie still didn't want to move, while mocking that Stephanie was too much of a perfectionist. Feeling offended, Stephanie discussed when Ellie snatched Michael at the cafe last night, even though Ellie already knew that he had seen her first. Ellie apologized and explained that nothing happened in the bathroom, but Stephanie was still upset, and then Ellie blamed Stephanie for still hoping for her ex-boyfriend. Stephanie responded by saying that Ellie didn't deserve to give her advice, because Ellie had never been in a serious relationship with any man. And afterwards, Stephanie left Ellie alone at the place. While staying away, Stephanie had waited for Ellie, who she thought would soon catch up, but since Ellie never showed up, Stephanie decided to actually go to the next tourist spot alone. On the other hand, Ellie was still sunbathing in the same place, without knowing that she was being observed by a mysterious figure. Ellie sends a message to Stephanie to apologize for her words and invites Stephanie to meet at a restaurant for lunch. But when Ellie gets up to put on clothes, a mysterious male figure suddenly ambushes her. A few hours later, Stephanie arrived at the agreed restaurant, But unfortunately, she found neither Ellie nor her bike there. Stephanie tried to call Ellie, but she didn't get any answer, and finally she left a voice message. In the midst of her confusion, she ran into Michael, who happened to be there too, and he introduced himself as Michael and offered her a ride to the hotel, but she declined. When Stephanie returned to the waterfall to pick up Ellie, she realized that Michael was following her, and finally they searched for Ellie together while continuing to try to call her. But soon they were shocked after seeing Ellie's cell phone left there while her bicycle was gone. Shortly afterward, Michael found drops of blood on the ground while Stephanie was calling the police. And an hour later, a policeman named Calvo arrived, and he seemed to be familiar with Michael. They both took Calvo to the waterfall location and showed him a photo of Ellie. Calvo didn't seem too shocked to hear that Ellie had disappeared in his area, because according to him, many female tourists had disappeared in this area. After learning that Stephanie and Ellie had split up because of a fight, Calvo closed the case, saying confidently that Ellie would be back soon. However, Stephanie still wanted to report the current incident, so she and Calvo went to the police station to make a missing persons report. Calvo then explained that this was all he could do, although Stephanie still insisted that Calvo form a search team, and Calvo promised that if Ellie hadn't turned up in the next 24 hours, then the report would be forwarded to the Central Police in the city. Because there was no other choice, Stephanie finally returned to the hotel while asking several residents about Ellie's whereabouts, but strangely, all the residents ignored her. Then unexpectedly afterwards, Stephanie met with Chucho, who yesterday bought her and Ellie a drink, as well as the person who was emotional because he didn't have time to sleep together with Ellie. But unexpectedly, Chucho immediately ran towards the bridge so that Stephanie became more suspicious and immediately chased him. Unable to catch up, Stephanie went back to where her bike was parked, and she realized that someone had cut the spokes off. Finally, Stephanie was forced to walk to the hotel, and she kept checking if Ellie had come home, but she didn't find her. Seeing Michael's room open, Stephanie went inside and started to search his bag because she thought he looked suspicious. Unexpectedly, Stephanie found Ellie's yellow bracelet, so she immediately reported her findings to Calvo, who then Calvo seemed uncomfortable with her arrival. Calvo also promised to check Michael later, and it seemed that this police officer did not seem to take the complaint seriously. While from a distance the receptionist watched and then asked what was going on, she calmed Stephanie down and asked her to come in, while her husband seemed to give his wife a suspicious code at the time. While inside, Stephanie saw Chucho passing by on a motorcycle and not wanting to lose him again, she decided to use the hotel car without permission to follow him. After following Chucho for some distance, Stephanie lost track of her in an abandoned village. There, Stephanie opened the gate and entered several buildings in a fairly creepy state because there was no one living there. While checking the surroundings, someone approached, which made Stephanie immediately run away. But it turned out that the person was Michael, who then tried to calm her down. When Stephanie shows Ellie the bracelet found in Michael's room, Michael rejects the accusation because the yellow bracelet belongs to his girlfriend named Camilla, who mysteriously disappeared 6 months ago. Because the police, according to him, are not seriously looking, Michael finally decides to look for Camilla himself. After hearing his explanation and being invited to work together, Stephanie agrees to split up to look for the kidnapper, who is likely the same person. Meanwhile, in a hidden building, Ellie wakes up from her stupor in a limp state. It wasn't long before Calvo saw the hotel car stolen by Stephanie and happened to bump into Michael. As if he hated Michael, Calvo asked where Stephanie was while explaining that Stephanie had stolen the hotel car. This made Michael insinuate Calvo by saying that the police now prioritize missing cars rather than looking for missing people. Hearing the accusation, Calvo firmly told Michael to get into the car on the pretext of checking it regarding the bracelet that Stephanie found earlier. On the other hand, Ellie was fully awake, and she realized that the kidnapper was Chucho. Trying to escape from that place, Ellie lured him while holding a broken bottle, but when Chucho was tempted, Ellie was unable to resist him, so she was immediately raped. Fortunately, Chucho was called by his boss, who made him stop for a moment to pick up the phone. A few hours later, Stephanie found Chucho's parked bike and decided to check inside. It wasn't long before Stephanie finally saw Ellie, who was being held captive, and she turned off the generator to get Chucho away from Ellie. But when Chucho tried to turn the generator back on, Stephanie accidentally dropped the bike, so Chucho immediately checked every corner of the place. Stephanie hid while Chucho thought that the bike had fallen on its own, and then Stephanie slowly approached Ellie. Using a broken bottle, Stephanie tried to quickly untie the knots that bound her best friend, and succeeded even though Chucho finally realized what was going on. They then ran to the car and locked the door. But unexpectedly, the car didn't start right away, while Chucho tried to break the window with his punch. When he realized that the car couldn't start, Chucho disappeared and appeared by throwing a big rock that made the car glass break. Because the car was no longer safe, the two girls decided to get out and run away as hard as they could, but Chucho managed to catch Ellie, who was accidentally dropped right on a rock. When Stephanie was hysterical seeing Ellie bleeding profusely, Calvo happened to pass by, and Michael immediately beat Chucho, who was attacking Stephanie. Then Stephanie screamed when she realized that Ellie had died. Moments later, Calvo forced Stephanie to wait in the car, and when she got in, Stephanie realized that the door could only be opened from the outside. Meanwhile, Calvo's suspicious look and Stephanie's code made Michael take action. He grabbed a gun and pointed it at Calvo and Chucho while forcing them to tell him Camilla's whereabouts. Michael asked both of them to kneel, and then unexpectedly, Calvo admitted that Camilla was alive and was in a place. But Calvo threatened Michael because if he killed him now, then Camilla would not be found forever. Calvo then offers a deal that he promises to return Camilla if Michael lets him take Stephanie, which Michael unexpectedly agrees to. But as soon as he lowers the gun, Calvo immediately kills him with a spare gun. After that, Stephanie, who is still trapped in the police car, is immediately taken to their headquarters, and finally Stephanie finds out that Calvo is the boss of the Chucho, which is a human trafficking syndicate in the area. Calvo then gets a phone call and tells Stephanie that there is already a prospective buyer interested in her. Before leaving, Chucho sedates her and takes her away by boat when it gets dark. On the way, Stephanie woke up and had the idea of throwing a fishing net at Chucho while dropping him into the water. Stephanie then swam to escape from Calvo while untangling her hands in the water while Calvo searched for her using a flashlight. When Stephanie surfaced, Calvo gave chase, and when he reached the shore, he saw a man in his car who turned out to be a prospective buyer who was going to buy Stephanie. Calvo, who had captured Stephanie, immediately transacted with the man there. But when the money was about to be handed over, Stephanie took the opportunity to rebel while kicking the man's vital organs and then moved away. When Calvo saw him, he did not want to shoot because the transaction had not been completed. Stephanie finally managed to meet a man on the dock, but Calvo shot him. Then Stephanie decided to hide in the boat while Calvo continued to search for her. After the situation was deemed safe, Stephanie came out of hiding, and unexpectedly, Calvo was still waiting for her there. Fortunately, Stephanie managed to grab a thrown weapon and immediately killed Calvo. After that, she woke up in a state of shock and then walked to save herself. In the morning, Stephanie saw an official car driving towards her and decided to take a stone because she already did not trust the security in the area. It turned out that the car belonged to the military police who had come to help her. Who knows who complained? Maybe the receptionist reported it, or it could be because there were too many cases of missing tourists in this hinterland. And the movie ends with Stephanie finally returning.